What is good, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is JustClark, and today I am going to talk about 5 art mistakes that I have learned from. This is like a quick little sneak peek at the timeline of my illustrations, and the one on the right, the owner from Genshin Impact, FBI. Chill. There are clothes on, which means it's not lewd. By the way, go check out my Twitter. You're gonna see it there. Alright, so we're gonna get started with the first mistake, and this one is very general, so the other mistakes that I'm going to talk about later in the video, they all can kind of relate to this, and that is contrast, lack thereof. So, ooh, yo, that sounded pretty cool. I sound like a philosopher right there. Contrast. Is it just light and dark? No. Contrast can talk about a lot of stuff. It could be hard and soft shadows, it could be dark and bright colors, and it could be warm and cool tones. Now, the most noticeable is the lack of contrast in shadows, that is hard and soft shadows. The shadows around here, and what I did to improve this, which is right here. Now, what are hard and soft shadows? Hard shadows are shadows that are usually like casted by an object to another surface, so that could be like if you put your hand on top of your hand like that, it's gonna be a hard shadow, not a soft shadow. Soft shadows, use it for softer surfaces, for rounded surfaces, but when you're lacking the contrast of hard and soft shadows and everything is just softened out, it becomes to look actually flat because there's no transition, there are no cuts like in video editing. And the example of what I'm talking about right here, kind of remove this shadow from your mind and just think of what's underneath it. I blurred out the dark part of the skin and transitioned it to the highlights, and a good example of me not repeating that same mistake is one right here, the shadow being casted by this. Oh, I kind of missed that, fuck. Don't mind that, you can just think that the shadow is right there. So yeah, another part is the hair right there, and like I said, hard shadows are usually cast by objects, so this shadow is being casted by the hair, so hard shadow. This is being casted by the chin, hard shadow. Alright, so second mistake that I make, it also relates very much to hard shadows, soft shadows, contrast, and that stuff, and that is overblending, which is another mistake that I do here. I blended too much of the arm. I just had to remedy it by going multiply layer gray and adding shadows, which does not really help. And a good example right here, I'm first going to blend this, because a lot of us can get too carried away by just blurring everything out because it looks good at first glance. What we gotta think about is that the shape of the fingers is not a smooth, like this is not the shape of a finger. The shape of a finger is this area right here, then there's gonna be bone there, and then another shape right here. So it's not in the direction of an arch that's like that. It's more of like going towards here and then a hard turn going down. If we blend this area, it becomes too much of a smooth transition, and it just makes it look going down like that instead of the actual way, which is that. So that's the problem with overblending that I avoid. Just keeping in mind the shape, the inner shape, the inner anatomy of the body. Now, the third tip is either using too much of the blend modes, mostly multiply and add layer, or not utilizing it enough. And we're gonna talk about first using too much, which is right here. Very important tip to avoid this is to plan out the lighting beforehand, before you start coloring, during the sketching phase. And actually, even if you're just planning to shade it, just so it does not look like you're just shading all over the place. And right here is a good example. I didn't really plan out the lighting. I was just thinking, okay, lights at the back, lights on top. And so what I did here is get the color of the environment, which is around this yellowish cream color, and then just add lights, fix the opacity, and then boom, light go brrr, the scenario here is supposed to be the lights coming from the back, from the tavern. If I just put light around here, and I colored the walls here darker than over there, it's not going to make sense. Like, why the are there lights here when the walls are so dark? It does not make sense. And so to avoid that, you just need to plan out the lighting scenario at the start. And the second part is not utilizing it enough, which also relates to lighting. Now for the first tip, you gotta set up a lighting scenario, right? And obviously you gotta study how lighting a scene works, as well as color theory with, like, you know, red goes well with blue, contrasts it, blue goes with yellow, kind of stuff like that. What I did by utilizing the blend modes is, instead of having to select a darker color and then color it slowly in this scene with Diona, what I actually did to make this shadowed look is I took a multiply layer, selected the base color of the tavern, which is around the brownish, shaded it over her, so this is where light is not hitting. Just gotta keep in mind the lighting, which is something that I've planned out before coloring. And now it looks too dark, just adjust the opacity. And then boom, look at that, it's magic. And you don't have to completely manipulate, like if her base color is like this, you're gonna have to select a darker color just like that. No, you don't have to think too much about that. You could just select the base color and then add the multiply layer. But then again, like I said at the start, don't rely too much on it. Still gotta learn about colors and lighting scenarios. So yeah, that's a third mistake. Alright, so the fourth is not having line variation, not having good line quality. And what do I mean about this? This is a great example. Look at it here over the thighs. Now the thighs, you know, they're smooth surface. Thighs are supposed to be smooth, and you're probably wondering, how can you tell that with lines? I'm gonna show you all the secret. Instead of going with just like that, that's just how you do the line work. Line variation basically is like you go from thick to thin.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Now to show the effect of this, of how line variation can help with your coloring, with your illustration, like that. And then I'm gonna color it real quick. So, how does this line variation thing work? What did it do? So, this shows a lot in the highlight area. Right here, as you can see, the highlight, it just looks way too encaged by the lines. Compared to this, because we have thinner lines around here, one, it looks smoother, and it actually helps because the line is dark and we have a lighter area around here. It helps the highlights pop, and that's the point of the highlights. The heavy lines are usually around the areas where they meet and harder surfaces. So around the knee, I made sure that I kept the lines harsh and sharp and not smooth, because the knee is a hard surface. Using the kind of disconnected looking lines can help with showing smooth surfaces. And the last mistake is inconsistent style or quality or coloring. This, for example, my shading on the head was pretty simple. Some shadow, you know, it's actually lacking shadows, bruh. Like here, it's just simple shading, simple shapes. What makes it inconsistent is this, the clothes. They stand out too much. If I zoom out, this thing has too much detail compared to this. And the problem that makes is it gives too much focus to here when the focus is supposed to be here. Here, oh, well, there's so much detail around here as well. But that's all good, because this is where the action is happening, not around here. This is where I want the viewers to look. And this is just icing on the cake. By that, what I mean is just put more detail on the areas where you want the viewers to look. But yeah, one, that's inconsistent because too much detail here compared to this. And second is the saturation, because look, this desaturated, this saturated, this just right. It's not too saturated, it's not desaturated, but look, different. So what does that do? Inconsistent. And yeah, so that's just the recap. But just gotta keep in mind on the contrast, hard shadow, soft shadow, dark and bright colors, warm and cool tones as well. So you don't want some images to be overly warm, which is like around the red, orange, yellow color sides. And sometimes you don't want it too cool with around the blue green side. You want to have a little bit of contrast to make sure that the balance in the image is right there. Second is overblending, like the skin, like the fingers, like I said. Overblending gives too smooth a transition to some things. Relying too much on blend modes or not utilizing them. This goes with lighting and colors. So plan out your lighting scenario before you start coloring. Fourth is the line art quality, the line variations, line weights to tell the surface of something. Thinner lines, finer lines, disconnected lines for smoother surfaces, and harder lines, thicker lines where lines meet, and for harder surfaces. And last but not the least is having a consistent style, quality, or coloring. You want to put more detail on the areas where you want the viewer's eye to be directed. Just a quick message. All these mistakes aren't something that's like suddenly you know what mistakes to avoid. You're suddenly just unable to commit them. No, that is not possible. The real secret here is to just keep drawing. Look at your illustrations. Look at the stuff that you made. Think about the areas to improve. Slowly but surely, don't burn yourself out. Don't go like, oh, this illustration is so shit. I suck. I don't want to draw anymore. Don't do that. All right, just go one by one. You know you're learning when you're not repeating the same mistakes again and again. Keep drawing, you'll learn along the way. All of these stuff, I had to commit a ton of mistakes, not purposefully. As I draw and then as I improve, I avoid them, I don't do them again, and that's how I reached here. I hope y'all continue to fucking draw, continue to improve, and I'll see you on the next video.